The commons is a general term referring to the cultural and natural resources accessible to all members of a society, including natural materials such as air, water, and a habitable earth. These resources are held in common, not owned privately. Background: the term commons derives from the traditional English legal term of common land, also known colloquially as commons. However, while common land might have been owned collectively, by a legal entity, the Crown or a single person, it was subject to different forms of regulated usage, such as grazing of livestock, hunting, lopping of foliage or collecting resins. In distinction, the term commons in modern economic theory has come to refer to the cultural and natural resources accessible to all members of a society, such as air, water, and a habitable earth. A failure was a widespread metaphor of early economics, which came up in the 18th centuries. Early economic writers and scientists supported the British Agricultural Revolution and land reform laws and were in favour of unified ownership of the land. They tried to get rid of the traditional usage rights of the commoners and used the tragedy of the commons as a suitable metaphor. They quoted, among others, Aristotle's polemic against the polis of Plato in the sense of or everybody's property is nobody's property respectively the most common good is the least guarded. The conflict around the dissolution of the traditional commons played a watershed role in landscape development and cooperative land use patterns and property rights. Among others, pamphlets as of William Forster Lloyd 1833 on herders overusing a shared parcel of land on which they are each entitled to let their cows graze became part of the common wisdom in economics. The same concept is sometimes called the tragedy of the fishers, because fishing too many fish before or during breeding could cause stocks to plummet. According to Joachim Radke, the alleged failure of the commons in the early economic literature and the status and functionality of the actual commons did not correspond at all. While the commons tragedy was used as means for the enclosure movement and the clearances and in general to get rid of collective rights in favor of private property, the actual commons or Olmen provided no signs of an uncontrollable failure at all. As well, Eleanor Ostrom found the tragedy of the commons not as prevalent or as difficult to solve. She and her co-workers looked at how real-world communities manage communal resources, such as fisheries, land irrigation systems, and farmlands, and they identified a number of factors conducive to successful resource management. One factor is the resource itself. Resources with definable boundaries can be preserved much more easily. A second factor is resource dependence. There must be a perceptible threat of resource depletion, and it must be difficult to find substitutes. The third is the presence of a community. Small and stable populations with a thick social network and social norms promoting conservation do better. A final condition is that there be appropriate community-based rules and procedures in place with built-in incentives for responsible use and punishments for overuse. Locals have often come up with solutions to the commons problem themselves. When the commons is taken over by non-locals, those solutions can no longer be used. Robert Axelrod contends that even self-interested individuals will often find ways to cooperate, because collective restraint serves both the collective and individual interests. Today, the commons are also understood within a cultural sphere. These commons include literature, music, arts, design, film, video, television, radio, information, software and sites of heritage. The crowdsourcing movement and among others Wikipedia are examples of the production and maintenance of common goods by certain communities in the form of videos, music, or encyclopedic knowledge that can be freely accessed by anyone without a central authority. Tragedy in the Wiki Commons is avoided among others by community control and trading status and attention of individual authors within the Wikipedia community. Economist Peter Barnes has proposed a sky trust to fix this problem in the generic commons. He claims that the sky belongs to all the people, and companies do not have a right to overpollute. It is a type of cap and dividend program. Ultimately the goal would be to make polluting excessively more expensive than cleaning what is being put back into the atmosphere. The information commons may protect the community. Companies that pollute the environment release information about what they are doing. The Corporate Toxics Information Project and information like the Toxic 100, a list of the top 100 polluters, helps people know what these corporations are doing to the environment. Stewardship, caring for the commons is an act of individual stewardship and collective trusteeship. It is the very essence of being a Euro unregistered trademark, the fundamental basis of interdisciplinarity. It is one of the few ways we have to acknowledge our debt to the past generations, and to embody our link to future generation. It shows we believe in ourselves as an enduring civilization, not an economy. Caring for the commons can stress relationships between otherwise friendly neighbors, especially if they come with unrealistic expressions. Caring for a shared commons requires an equal balance of stepping forward and getting the work done by creating an informal atmosphere that allows everyone to relax and enjoy. So, caring for the commons can not only build relationships but also strain them. Caring for the commons means more than just regulating. Caretakers are needed, that is, a system nurturing societal cooperation, sharing of goods and thoughtfulness of generations to come. It entails establishing norms that reduce free riding and hold communities together. For our generation seems to be moving beyond viewing commons only as a norm, and taking action to enable and protect them in all spheres of our lives. Types, digital. Mayo Foster Morrell proposed a definition of digital commons as an information and knowledge resources that are collectively created and owned or shared between or among a community and that tend to be non-exclusive, that is, be available to third parties. Thus, they are oriented to favor use and reuse, rather than to exchange as a commodity. Additionally, the community of people building them can intervene in the governing of their interaction processes and of their shared resources. Examples of digital commons are Wikipedia, a type of free software, and open-source hardware projects. Environmental, Europe. Originally in medieval England, the common was an integral part of the manor, and was thus legally part of the estate and land owned by the lord of the manor, but over which certain classes of manorial tenants and others held certain rights. By extension, the term commons has come to be applied to other resources which a community has rights or access to. The older texts use the word common to denote any such right, but more modern usage is to refer to particular rights of common, and to reserve the name common for the land over which the rights are exercised. Common land does not mean state-owned or public land, but is owned by private individuals or corporations called partition units. A person who has a right in, or over, common land jointly with another or others is called a commoner. In Middle Europe, commons respectively small-scale agriculture in especially southern Germany, Austria and the Alpine countries in general were kept, in some parts till the present. Some studies have compared the German and English dealings with the commons between the late medieval times and the agrarian reforms of the 18th–19th century. The UK were quite radical with doing away and enclosing former commons, while southwestern Germany had the most advanced commons structures and was much more willing to keep them. The Lower Rhine region took an intermediate position. However, the UK and the former dominants have till today a large amount of crown land which often is used for community or conservation purposes. Alfred Thomas Grove and Oliver Rackham's History of the Nature of Mediterranean Europe see a rich heritage of the tradition of highly varied land use patterns there, including commons, which are base of the ecological variety in the Mediterranean. Mongolian grasslands, based on a research project by the Environmental and Cultural Conservation in Eurasia from 1992 to 1995, satellite images were used to compare the amount of land degradation due to livestock grazing in the regions of Mongolia, Russia, and China. In Mongolia, where shepherds were permitted to move collectively between seasonal grazing pastures, degradation remained relatively low at approximately 9%. Comparatively, that of Russia and China, which implemented state-owned pastures involving immobile settlements and in some cases privatization by household, was much higher at around 75% and 33% respectively. A collaborative effort on the part of Mongolians proved much more efficient in preserving grazing land. Lobster fishery of Maine. Widespread success of the Maine lobster industry is often attributed to the willingness of many Euro-unregistered trademark lobstermen to uphold and support lobster conservation rules. These rules include harbor territories not recognized by the state, informal trap limits, and laws imposed by the state of Maine. Essentially, the lobstermen collaborate without much government intervention to sustain their common pool resource. Community forests in Nepal, implemented in late 1980s, Nepal chose to decentralize government control over forests. Community forest programs work by giving local areas a financial stake in nearby woodlands, and therefore increasing the incentive to protect them from overuse. These local institutions regulate harvesting and selling of timber and land, and must use any profit towards community development and preservation of the forests. In 20 years, locals have noticed visible improvements in the number of trees. In addition to this, community forestry contributed to community development in rural areas such as school construction, irrigation channel and drinking water construction and road construction. Similarly, their fund allocated into the poor-focused activities as well. Furthermore, community forestry has become an example of an appropriate institution for democratic practices at grassroots level, where we can see absolute inclusion into their executive committee. Irrigation systems of New Mexico. Leshkria is a method of collective responsibility and management for irrigation systems in desert areas. In New Mexico, a community-run organization known as Leshkria Association supervises water in terms of diversion, distribution, utilization, and recycling, in order to reinforce agricultural traditions and preserve water as a common resource for future generations. Notable theorists. See also, Copyleft, House of Commons, Patent Left, Tyranny of Small Decisions, Historical Movements, The Diggers, Kett's Rebellion, The United Order, Contemporary Movements, Abe Lawley Base Mjondolo in South Africa, The Bhumi Pratirodh Committee in India, Electronic Frontier Foundation, the EZLN in Mexico, Family Liveless in Haiti, The Homeless Workers Movement in Brazil, The Land is Ours in the UK, Take Back the Land in the US, The Landless Workers Movement in Brazil, Movement for Justice in El Barrio in the United States of America, Narmada Bachao Andolan in India. References, notes. Further reading, Bowers, Chet. Revitalizing the Commons, Cultural and Educational Sites of Resistance and Affirmation. Lexington Books. Bowers, Chet. The Way Forward, Educational Reforms that Focus on the Cultural Commons and the Linguistic Roots of the Ecological Crisis. Eco-Justice Press. Fourier, Charles. The Theory of the Four Movements, Greg, Pauline Freeborn John, A Biography of John Lilburn, Harvey, Neil. The Chiapas Rebellion, The Struggle for Land and Democracy, Hill, Christopher. The World Turned Upside Down, Radical Ideas During the English Revolution, Hill, Christopher Winstanley. The Law of Freedom. Unregistered Trademark and Other Writings, Hyde, Lewis. Commoners Air, Revolution, Art and Ownership, Kennedy, Kennedy Diggers, Levelers, and Agrarian Capitalism, Radical Political Thought in 17th-Century England, Leeming, Hugo P. Hidden Americans, Maroons of Virginia and the Carolinas, Linebaugh, Peter, and Marcus Rediker. The Many-Headed Hydra. Sailors, Slaves, Commoners, and the Hidden History of the Revolutionary Atlantic, Linebaugh, Peter. The Magna Carta Manifesto, Liberties and Commons for All, Lomies, Douglas. Radical Democracy, Mitchell, John. Hanson. Trespassing, An Inquiry into the Private Ownership of Land, Neeson, J. M. Commoners, Common Right, Enclosure and Social Change in England, 1700–1820, Negri, Antonio, and Michael Hart. Commonwealth. Harvard University Press. ISBN 0674060288, Newfont, Catherine. Blue Ridge Commons, Environmental Activism and Forest History in Western North Carolina, Patel, Raj. The Value of Nothing, Price, Richard, ed. Maroon Societies, Rebel Slave Communities in the Americas, Pruden, Pierre Joseph. What is Property? Rexroth, Kenneth. Communalism, From Its Origins to the 20th Century, Rowe, Jonathan R. Commonwealth, The Hidden Economy That Makes Everything Else Work, Shantz, Jeff. Communist Tendencies, Mutual Aid Beyond Communism. External links, On the Commons. Dedicated to exploring ideas and action about the commons. Which encompasses natural assets such as oceans and clean air as well as cultural endowments like the Internet, scientific research and the arts. the Peer-to-Peer Foundation and the Economics and the Commons Conference. International Journal of the Commons, an interdisciplinary peer-reviewed open-access journal dedicated to furthering the understanding of institutions for use and management of resources that are enjoyed collectively. Infrastructuring the Commons, Aalto University's Special Interest Group SIG in the Commons and Public Services. The SIG addresses the relevance of the Commons as a framework to expand the understanding of emerging considerations for the design, provision and maintenance of public services and urban space. Helsinki, Finland.